suddenly AIs were able to work on a much longer time horizon. So as I talked about, you're not sitting there as a human going back and forth, prompting the AI along to the next step. Suddenly they could just autonomously do the work themselves. So Opus 4.6 here, you can see time horizon of software tasks, different LLMs complete 50% of the time. Suddenly Opus 4.6 can work for multiple hours, over 12 hours. And if you give it a swarm and an orchestration layer, like the C compiler that they built in the Anthropic labs, they worked on the task fairly autonomously for 2 weeks. So they went off, planned the project. I think it was 16 agents, planned the project amongst themselves, divvied up the task and got to work. And that included testing, deploying, making sure it all worked. And then eventually after 2 weeks, and I think they spent $10,000 in credits, coming back to the humans and saying, here we go, we've built you a C compiler. By extending the time horizons of these jobs, it means more complicated tasks can be handled. It's able to hold more information in its context. It's able to deal with that information more efficiently. So it's not purely about size, it's about how they compact, how they deal with the longer projects. And that's allowing us to expand out the time horizon, which allows us to deal with much more complicated tasks. So that suddenly started to shoot up, and Claude Opus 4.6 is here. This is why Claude Code on the $200 a month plan is such an unlock. It's a lot of money, but it can churn through tasks. That's one thing. In December, something shifted. December 2025 was a pivot point. Ethan Mollick was agreeing something moved in 2025. This is the release of OpenClaw. So OpenClaw came out in December and it took off in January, February. It has now overtaken most of the other open source projects on the internet. Let's pull up the GitHub for it. They were at 200,000 stars last time I looked. They're at 260,000. So overtaking pretty much all of the open source projects that have ever come before. This blue one is VS Code, PyTorch, and Claude Code. So you can see that is not even a hockey stick. That is just a vertical line in terms of star history. Star history isn't everything, but that shows us there is a huge amount of interest in agentic AI and AI that could just go off and do stuff. These are the early adopters, but that's going to start filtering down to everybody else. This is Claude Code and the amount of money they're making from Claude Code. So they actually make money because they are focusing on a part of the market, people who are using these kind of tools and who are willing to spend a couple $100 a month. They're not worrying about their $20 a month subscriptions. They are much more on the API side and the high-end max plan subscriptions, because people who are building stuff, people who are using this stuff to build economically viable products or to build businesses are willing to pay. They're willing to pay because they realize it's a huge leverage. It's an investment rather than a cost at this point. And they raised 30 billion, which is the third largest funding round of all time. It was the second largest funding round of all time until about a week later, OpenAI raised 110 billion, which is the single largest private funding round ever. So money is still coming in. Claude Code is written by itself. So this is Boris Cherny, who is the leader of Claude Code. He's saying, in the last 30 days, 100% of my contributions to Claude Code were written by Claude Code. That is the same with Codex. So the ChatGPT version, Codex 5.3, the final version that we got was written with the help of the early version of 5.3. And this is what we're seeing. Guys are doing all the commits. If you look at the commit history of someone like Peter Steinberger, who created OpenClaw, he's committing thousands of times a day. There's no way you can do that as a human being. The productivity is just going through the roof. This is Claude Code commits over time on GitHub. So these would be public repositories. You can see it wasn't really until October 2025 that people were like, oh shit, this Claude Code, this is quite good, isn't it? And it just boom, went up. So daily commits are 140,000, probably more by now, just going up because people are using these tools. The tools are now good enough to use to build and build. So I'm going to put list into the newsletter. Something big is happening. That was a viral post. Something shifted in 2025, especially in December. And it's important that we get on top of this because we've shifted from talking to AI doing stuff. Very important. What I wanted to show you is a couple of ways you can get started with that, because it's all well and good me telling you that, but how are you actually going to do it? So go to Quen. A couple of ways to do it. First up, Cowork. This is the one that I personally use, Claude Cowork. So you can download the app version of Claude. This will not work unless you're using the app version. So you can download it onto your computer, and you're going to be doing it at this at your desktop. You can get it on Windows, you can get it on Mac OS. They've just added it to Windows, so that's fantastic. And then you're going to use CoWork to start to automate tasks. It is quite slow, I will say that. So what you can do is you can set it up with a task and then just leave it. I leave things overnight. They added last week the ability to schedule tasks. So you can set up tasks to run overnight on your computer while you're not at it. It doesn't take control of your mouse, but it would take control of a browser window, and you can see it moving around, and it's slow. It is very slow. But if you set up tasks on a schedule to run overnight, it's absolutely fine, because it means while you were sleeping, it's continuing to do that work for you, and then it will report back to you in the morning.